After 20 years as the matriarch of a noble household, I treated my mother-in-law like my own mother, and attended to my husband's every need. I poured my heart and soul into raising my children. Yet all I received was, "Marrying a woman like you is a disgrace to our family." I was abandoned in a remote courtyard and left to die alone. If I could start over, I would choose a different path. My mother-in-law wants to become a nun? Let her go. My husband wants to take a concubine into the house? Let him. My son spends his days in debauchery? Let him. What they do has nothing to do with me. But one by one, they all come to me asking me to take care of them. Chapter 1. I never thought I would die like this. The wind, mixed with snow, blew into the house like a knife. The maid knelt on the ground and cried, "Lady, they say there is no more coal." How could that be? In the middle of winter, in the Marquis's mansion, there is no coal? It must be someone's order. Food rations are cut. Expenses are restricted. And now even the charcoal for heating is withheld. As for whose orders they are, it certainly isn't the matriarch who claimed to treat me like her own daughter when I married into the family. It isn't the husband who swore to love me for a lifetime and never abandoned me when he sought my hand in marriage. Or perhaps it's the son I carried in my womb for 10 months, yet had to call mother when he was born. The wind blew again, and I covered my chest and coughed. But I coughed up a mouthful of blood. "Lady, I'll go get a doctor." No need. It's New Year's Eve. Which doctor would be willing to brave the wind and snow? To see a woman who has been abandoned by the Marquis's mansion? I asked Hyundai to move the recliner outside the courtyard. Before long, fireworks lit up the night sky. Just one street away, the Marquis's mansion welcomed a new bride and a new son. So this New Year's Eve was naturally very lively. Only I was left behind. I had been married into the Marquis's mansion for 20 years and had devoted myself to the entire household. But I ended up unloved by my mother-in-law, disliked by my husband, and hated by my son. How ironic. "Lady? The sound of Hyundai's cries was drowned out by the fireworks. The sound of fireworks drowned out Hyundai's sobs. I died on such a joyful night. My husband is embracing his new wife. My son is setting off fireworks. And my mother-in-law is sipping her new tea. Not a single person remembers the woman who gave everything for them. Fortunately, heaven remembers me. I have been reborn. At this moment, I am holding a teacup, about to smash it onto Shinhuiji's body. Shui miaoi. Don't be so unreasonable. It's just taking a concubine. Why are you so angry? I froze, clutching the teacup tightly in my hands. This was 6 years ago. Shinhuiji had kept a mistress for 10 years, hiding it perfectly. When I found out, I fell seriously ill. Before I had fully recovered, Shinhuiji brought her home openly. He said he wanted to marry her as a concubine. I have been betrothed to a Ji since childhood. If I hadn't married you first, I would have married her as my main wife. Now that she's a concubine, she still has to call you sister. What else are you dissatisfied with? After marrying him for over a decade, I never knew he had an arranged fiancée from childhood. In my previous life, I didn't hesitate to smash that teacup. I had a huge argument with Shinhuiji. So angry I vomited blood. This left me with a chronic illness. But now, as I clutched that teacup, my raised hand trembled slightly. Not a single trace of anger remained. I had been reborn. Reborn at the very beginning of everything. Whether you agree or not, I must. Then marry her. I placed the teacup down leisurely. Shinhuiji froze. My husband does not hold it against you, girl, for remarrying. Nor does he care about the world's judgment. He is honoring the marriage agreement from over a decade ago. That is truly kind and righteous. I took a sip of tea, gazing at him with arched brows. Let us choose a good day to bring Do Girl into the family. I got up as Shinhuaiji looked at me as if he had seen a ghost. Why would I disagree? The emotional hurt from my previous life was one thing. But more importantly, I was concerned about the reputation of the Marquis's mansion. Duzi was indeed Shinhuaiji's childhood sweetheart. She had indeed been betrothed to Shinhuaiji. But back then, she despised the decline of the Marquis's mansion and broke off the engagement to marry the son of the Minister of Revenue. Less than 3 years later, she was divorced for disrespecting her mother-in-law. Her family was ashamed of her and refused to take her back. Shinhuaiji, however, did not despise her. He turned around and took her into his arms. But if this were to become public knowledge, the Marquis's mansion would have married a divorced woman as a concubine. A divorced woman who was also a colleague. How would the capital talk about the Marquis's mansion? How would Shinhuaiji face Duji, the former husband of his wife, who was now the prefect of the capital? In Shinhuaiji's eyes, all my considerations boiled down to 2 words: jealousy. Jealousy. Let him do as he pleases in this life. What did the reputation of the Marquis's mansion and Shinhuaiji's career have to do with me? Pack some clothes and send them to Miss Du. I instructed the maidservant. Inform the Marquis that once the date is selected, simply notify the inner courtyard. Not only do I agree to Shinhuaiji's marriage, I also demand that he marry her with great fanfare and splendor. The Marquis is marrying again. This is different from my previous life. In my previous life, I refused, and the servants only knew that I had a fierce argument with Shinhuaiji. They dared not gossip about anything else. But this time, my personal maid respectfully delivered the clothes and jewelry. Before leaving, she spoke in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Madam, please ask Miss Du to settle down in the Marquis's mansion. When the Marquis has decided on the wedding date, he will definitely marry Miss Du in a grand wedding procession. Yunxi returned and said that Duzi was completely stunned. Madam, are you really allowing Miss Du to become your co-wife? Yunxi was Yun Dai's older sister. In my previous life, she passed away even earlier than me. Before she died, she still remembered to bring her younger sister to the guest house and take care of me. I slipped a piece of osmanthus cake into her hand. 3 years in the guest house, this was a rare treat. Before I could say a word, there was a commotion outside. Master, please be careful. Don't bump the orchids. Huh. My good son has arrived. Mother, are you so useless? Shinhao kicked open my door. You let that woman into the house just like that? As the mistress of the loyal and brave Marquis's mansion, is this how you manage the household? I was holding a piece of osmanthus cake in my hand. I didn't bother to put it down. I took a bite and quietly looked at him. Shinhao was 14 this year. I married into the Marquis's mansion when I was 15, and gave birth to him that same year. I had a difficult delivery, and nearly died in childbirth after 3 days and nights. But over the years, I have never been close to him. First, after he was born, my mother-in-law said I needed to rest, and took him away. He was gone for 6 or 7 years. When I finally got him back, his eyes were filled only with his grandmother. Second, I later discovered the truth. My mother-in-law appeared harmonious on the surface, but behind my back, she had done everything to drive us apart. She made him study for my sake. She forbade him from associating with those spoiled brats because she hated him for tormenting me for 3 days on the delivery bed and couldn't bear to see him happy. She even forbade him from going to places of ill repute, fearing he would learn about matters of the heart. She wanted him to marry early and take away my authority over the household. Shinhao had already gone down the wrong path. Once, I felt guilty. I blamed myself for being weak and naive back then, for not keeping him by my side to raise him myself. I did everything in my power to make amends. It took me 3 years in the side courtyard to finally understand. Not all mothers and sons have a blood bond. Am I wrong? Shinhao stiffened his neck. Usually, when he got this angry, I would rush over, pour him tea, and pat his back, urging him to speak slowly. But today, I only averted my eyes. I poured myself a cup of tea. Mother! Shinhao's tone softened. That woman is fit to be a concubine. But how can she be a wife? If I marry a divorced woman, won't I be mocked to death at the Imperial Academy? And besides, others will mock you for being a poor family man. Is that so? In my previous life, he followed his mother-in-law in saying that I couldn't even tolerate a weak woman. They called me a jealous woman. I don't care. I won't let that woman into this house. If you marry her, I'll disown you as my son. I smiled. How? I looked at him. It's your father who needs to marry, not me. Shinhao stormed off in a rage. Before leaving, he shouted, "It's all because you couldn't keep your father's heart." Yunji hurried over to comfort me. The young master is still young. Please don't be angry. Madam. I shook my head. He's not young. He's just used to it. All these years, every mistake has been my fault. When my mother-in-law fell ill, I failed to care for her properly. My husband was busy with official duties, and I didn't know how to share his burdens. Also, tell the steward to prepare a carriage immediately. While it's still daylight, if we wait any longer, the nunnery will close. The Marquis's mansion was in an uproar. The Marquis was about to marry a new wife, and the old lady was about to become a nun. The Marquise, who had always been in charge and kept everyone in line, didn't say a word. When the servants asked her, she only replied, "Listen to the Marquis. Listen to the old lady." Yunji touched my forehead several times. She was worried that I had lost my mind from my illness a few days ago. I asked her to fetch some wine. There was nothing more pleasant than drinking wine and enjoying the snow. After all, this drama still had a long way to go. How could my mother-in-law really become a nun? In my previous life, I didn't find out until I was squeezed dry of every last drop of blood. The accounts my mother-in-law had given me were only a small part of the Marquis's mansion. She held on to the property, her son, and her grandson, and never thought of giving up her power. She only gave me the responsibility of managing the household under the pretext of the decline of the Marquis's mansion, waiting for me to use my dowry to cover the expenses of the mansion. How could Shinhuaiji give up so easily? In recent years, he had risen rapidly and was full of ambition. That Du girl is also exceptionally cunning. As Shinhuaiji once said in his previous life, she is the moon in the sky, the snow in the clouds. How could you, a mere mortal woman, compare to her? You want me to make her a concubine? I think you're dreaming. Sure enough, on her way out of the capital, my mother-in-law was forced back to the mansion by Shinhao's heart-wrenching cries. 3 days later, Shinhuaiji sent in the date he had chosen, written on a red slip of paper. It was urgent, the 18th of next month. 3 days later, my mother-in-law could no longer contain herself. She led the second and third branches of the family. My father asked you to take care of me before he died. But no one seems to remember that. Aunt, you are the mistress of this Marquis's mansion. You can't just ignore this. Really? When I was locked up in the annex, no one said a word about me being the mistress of this Marquis's mansion. Everyone there was playing good cop and bad cop, each saying their piece. They wanted to drown me in their spit. I didn't say a word. I just wanted to tell Yunji that next time someone came, not to even serve them tea. Chui. My mother-in-law slammed her hand on the table. What do you mean? Oh, she's losing her temper? I continued drinking my tea. Disrespecting your elders and acting so arrogantly, is that how a mistress should behave? I didn't even bother to lift my eyelids. Chui Miaoi. You're not thinking of Thinking of. Thinking of what? Divorce? You guessed it. The teacup clinked against the table. I raised my head and stood up. Mother is absolutely right. Miaoi is disrespectful to her elders and has a condescending attitude. She is unfilial to her mother and unable to teach her children, and is incapable of managing the Marquis's mansion. Please give Miaoi a letter of divorce and let her go. I curtsied and, without waiting for anyone to react, called Yunji. I had already prepared everything over the past few days. Everyone only knew that life in the Marquis's mansion had been getting better and better over the years. But they didn't know how much effort I had put into it. The next few years were the most important years of Shenhuai's career. It was no exaggeration to say that he spent money like water. In my previous life, I had almost depleted my entire dowry to make ends meet. This time, whoever wants to manage the household finances can do so. In front of everyone, I handed over all the ledgers to my mother-in-law. I summoned the steward and returned all the keys to the storehouses. All the land deeds, property deeds, and shop contracts I had accumulated over the years were also inventoried. Finally, I bowed and said, Miaoi is both incompetent and unlucky, and has no right to manage the Marquis's mansion. Now that the Marquis is marrying a new wife, my mother will surely find a good man for me. The Marquis and I will part on good terms and be happy again. The huge courtyard was silent. A moment later, a loud crash. Shinhuaiji smashed the teacup in his hand. Those who had come to interrogate me left in embarrassment. Shinhuaiji stayed behind and vented his anger. He probably wanted to argue with me. But I didn't want to argue with him. It's not worth wasting your life on someone who doesn't deserve it. Don't think that by using divorce as leverage, I'll back down. Dushi is someone this Marquis must marry. I shrugged. Marry her then. We've been married for over a decade. You want a divorce? Dream on. I puckered my lips. Then don't divorce. You. Shinhuaiji was so angry his hands were trembling. He finally flung his sleeves aside. As he left, he nearly kicked the door off its hinges. Lady, Yunshi approached worriedly. I poured myself a cup of tea leisurely. Divorce? It's not that easy. My parents passed away early, and I have no one to rely on in the capital. The divorce papers must be signed by both Shinhuaiji and his mother. But Shinhuaiji has just been appointed as the Deputy Minister of Works. If he were to marry Du Ji, he could still use the excuse of childhood friendship to maintain appearances. But if he were to divorce me to marry Du Ji, he would be subject to severe criticism. What about his mother? She has been eyeing my dowry since I entered the mansion. My father was merely the prince's tutor with little background. But my mother was the daughter of the renowned richest man in Jiangnan. When I got married, my red wedding procession stretched for miles and caused a sensation in the capital. If I divorce him, won't I have to take all the dowry that is already in the Marquis's mansion? When I made this public announcement, my original intention was only to resolutely cut off my control over the household. I just didn't expect such an unexpected bonus. My mother-in-law actually agreed to let Duzi marry into the family. I heard that when she returned that day. She was furious in her room. Who does she think she is? I am the loyal and brave Marquis's mansion, and we can't do without her. The next day, she relented towards Shinhuaiji. I understand my mother-in-law. She is probably the same as Shinhuaiji. She believes that I publicly mentioned divorce as a means of blackmail. She decided to turn the tables and force me to admit my mistake. Unfortunately, her plan backfired. Li Mama came to report on the progress of the wedding every few days. But I ignored her. Shin Hao came to cause a scene every few days. But I didn't care. On the day of the wedding, my mother-in-law looked extremely displeased. Especially since some servant had made a mistake and sent the invitation to Dushi's ex-husband. That ex-husband was quite the character and actually showed up. The scene became extremely awkward. The day after the wedding, my mother-in-law, in a fit of pique, handed over all the ledgers, land deeds, and other documents to Du Ji in front of me. That's fine. I no longer had to use my dowry to support this family of ingrates. Du Ji was just like in her previous life, beautiful and sweet-talking. In no time, she had her mother-in-law smiling from ear to ear. Shin Hao also liked her very much. After all, she didn't nag him to study or care if he came home late. Soon, my courtyard was almost forgotten. Shin Hao was busy enjoying his new marriage. Shin Hao was busy eating, drinking, and having fun all over the capital. My mother-in-law was busy becoming close as mother and daughter with her new daughter-in-law. And me? When night fell, I changed my clothes. I left the Marquis' mansion through a hidden door. My mother-in-law always looked down on me. In her eyes, even though no one in the Marquis' mansion had held an official position in the imperial court for 3 generations, it was still a distinguished family. My father was the tutor to the crown prince, but he was nothing but a scholar who had married a merchant's daughter. I, with the blood of a merchant in my veins, was lucky to be able to enter the Marquis' mansion. I should have burned incense in gratitude, but it was precisely because of my merchant blood that I was able to expand the Marquis' mansion's meager assets. That small door was left behind because I was afraid that she would despise me for being tainted by money. And there were some things that I had to go out and take care of myself. I deliberately left it there. I never imagined that it would become my gateway to freedom. Who are you? The eldest princess on the upper seat looked astonished. The wife of the loyal and brave Marquis? I shook my head. Your Highness. This servant is the daughter of the former Prince Tutor Cui Ku, Cui Miaoyi. I am not only skilled in business. My father was the highly respected Prince Tutor. From a young age, I followed my father in reading extensively, composing poetry at 3 and writing essays at 7. At the age of 10, my essay The Ode to the South was widely circulated in the capital. However, my father said that as a woman, I should not draw too much attention to myself. He concealed my name, claiming it was written by one of his students in the South. I once felt resentful. I vowed I will not lose to men in this life. But after I got married, I had to put away my books and tie up my hair. I took care of the household and served my parents-in-law. I taught my children and served my husband. After 20 years in the Marquis' mansion, I looked back and couldn't remember what I used to be like. In this life, I will find myself again. The Grand Princess had always been committed to promoting women's education and was eager to find talented women. When the Marquis' mansion was busy marrying a new bride, I wrote her 3 anonymous letters. As expected, she wanted to see me. After meeting me, she did not hold my identity against me, but was instead very surprised. The Marquis' wife is renowned for her virtue and is a model of a woman from a distinguished family. I never imagined she would be so talented and so courageous. I did as she asked, took the pseudonym Mr. Hung, and wandered around the major tea houses in the capital. In less than a month, a famous female teacher appeared in the capital, known for her extensive knowledge and ability to discuss ancient and modern history. And the news spread far and wide. Every day, I would enter and exit through a small door, change my clothes, cover my face with a veil, and change my voice. No one ever discovered me. 3 months later, the Marquis' wife was still unmarried. The Mr. Hung on Chang'an Street was in high demand. Another 3 months passed, and the princess spoke to me. Miao-yi, the path ahead may be difficult for you in your current position. Would you like me to help you divorce? I bowed. It is a family matter. I dare not trouble your highness. Your highness, please wait another month. In fact, less than half a month later, my opportunity arrived. After half a year of marriage into the Marquis' mansion, Du Zi finally became pregnant again. Yes. Again. She had been with Shuangwen for 10 years and had been pregnant 3 times. But each time, she had sent the baby away with a bowl of abortion medicine. In Shuangwen's words, she was resolute and cold. She would rather die than accept her child as an illegitimate son with no name or status. After all, she is a proper lady from a distinguished family. Unlike you. Unlike me. Whose mother was a merchant. At that moment, I realized that my husband was just like my mother-in-law. He had always looked down on me. After I gave birth to Shuangwen, I had no more children. The direct line of the Marquis's mansion was thin. When Duzi became pregnant, the whole family was jubilant. Until one day, Duzi drank a cup of tea at my place. After she returned home, she felt pain in her lower abdomen and quickly started bleeding. Once again, my courtyard was filled with people. Chui. I never thought you could be so cruel. Led by my mother-in-law, they placed the teacup with the drug residue on the table. The Marquis's mansion has spared you for 14 years because you married into the family and have always been diligent and conscientious. We have given you many chances. In the past 6 months, you haven't come to my West Wing. You haven't served your husband. You haven't taken care of the household. And you haven't even looked after Hao. All that is forgiven. Today, you even had the heart to harm an unborn child. I did not yield the main seat to the matriarch, instead surveying the crowd. So, what do you intend to do? The matriarch waved her hand. Huaiji. Write the divorce papers. As expected. I smiled. Someone immediately handed paper and ink to Shuangwen. Shuangwen looked at me deeply. Meowie. You have gone too far. No wonder I had to act this way. He picked up the brush and began to write. Husband. This is too hasty. I stood up. Yunji immediately knelt down. Lady Du. Before Lady Du arrived this morning, the young master came here. It wasn't just Lady Du's teacup, all the teapots in Chini Garden have been poisoned. Please investigate. Lady Shen and Lord Shen. Yunji brought out several teapots. Then another servant knelt down. These are the medicine packets found in the young master's room. Please investigate. Lady Shen and Lord Shen. As soon as he finished speaking, servants accompanied by a physician entered the courtyard and bowed. This man claims he sold the medicine to the young master. Please question him. Shuangwen immediately trembled and knelt on the ground. I turned and walked out. Later, the princess asked me how I could have calculated it so precisely. Knowing that Du Shi would use Shuangwen to frame him was one thing, but knowing exactly what kind of poison he used, and where he bought it, there was no other way. I had experienced it once before. It was the same in my previous life. Du Shi had only been in the house for a short while before he had won over everyone's hearts. He took advantage of my pregnancy to attack me. How could I have ever imagined it back then? I was 9 months pregnant, watching my son grow up. He had actually colluded with outsiders to harm me? My mother-in-law declared in front of everyone. Marrying a wife like you is a disgrace to our family. Shuangwen issued a divorce decree. Marrying a wife like you brings shame to the family. Shuangwen personally locked me in a separate courtyard. Marrying a wife like you brings shame to the family. One after another, they dragged me into the mud. I never got up again. I headed straight to the county office. By the time everyone reacted and caught up, I had already struck the drum at the courthouse gate. Chui Miaoui. Have you lost your mind? Shuangwen grabbed my hand. What are you doing? Report it to the authorities. I clenched my teeth. Accusing one's own mother of wrongdoing is unfilial, unkind, and unjust. According to the law. He's your son. Has he ever treated me like a mother? I made a move to strike again. Chui Miaoui. Shuangwen gritted his teeth. What do you want? The commotion at the courthouse had drawn a crowd of onlookers. The people following Shuangwen had also caught up. The 2 drum beats drew 2 courthouse attendants out to investigate. I gripped the drumstick tightly, straightened my back, and spoke aloud. Since the Marquis has found a new lover, why not part ways amicably? I want a divorce. For a moment, no one paid attention to the child in Duxi's womb. After all, compared to an unformed fetus, the person before them was more important. The mother-in-law protected Shen Hao as if he were the apple of her eye. Upon hearing that I intended to report him to the authorities, she was so enraged she nearly collapsed. But she didn't dare to gamble. She had already gambled once when Duxi entered the house. She lost. If she lost again, it would not only be the face of the Marquis' mansion, but the future of the entire Marquis' mansion. I settled the accounts with her and took back all the dowry I had contributed to the Marquis' mansion over the years. When Shen Hui heard me talking about silver, he was very disgusted. He threw down the divorce papers and left. Duxi, however, came to see me off on the day I left the mansion. It was probably because I had been living in peace for the past 6 months, making her feel that I no longer posed a threat to her. She wasn't as harsh on herself as she had been in her previous life. The child was safe. As she saw me off, she stood there with her swollen belly, unable to see anything, wearing a smile. Sister, you're leaving like this. Your younger sister really doesn't want you to go. You are just a woman, and Howard is not by your side. If you encounter any difficulties in the future, remember to return to the Marquis' mansion. She probably thought that with me gone, only good days awaited her. I also looked at her and smiled. Little sister, you must also love the Marquis dearly and stay together forever. Please don't let us part ways when disaster strikes. I began to work for the princess openly. Master Heng had already established a foothold in the capital, and I resumed my studies. As more and more talented scholars joined us, the name Master Heng became known to all. The princess seized the opportunity and petitioned the emperor. If Master Heng can achieve such success, why can't other women in the realm? Your Majesty, I am petitioning on behalf of all the women of the realm. Please allow the emperor to establish a school for women, permitting them to enroll and study. Whenever any conservative officials opposed her, she retorted, "Can women not achieve great things? Why don't you go debate, Mr. Hung? If you win, then speak again." With the eldest princess's strong push, in less than a year, the first school for girls in the capital was completed. During that year, I was busy with various lectures and debates, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that I buried myself in books. But that did not prevent some things from happening quietly. First, Duxi's child was born. It was a little boy. The Marquis' mansion was overjoyed and held a grand banquet. Second, Shen Hao was due to arrange his marriage. However, in the past 2 years, he had been associating with a group of dissolute young nobles, leading a dissolute life, and his reputation had suffered. The old nurse who had raised him came to see me twice, asking me to discipline him, at least before the marriage was arranged, so he wouldn't cause trouble. I ignored her. As winter approached, another incident occurred in the Marquis' mansion that became the talk of the town. Shen Hao took several of his nephews and caused a commotion in the ancestral hall. The cause was that Duxi had cut the silver allowance for each branch of the family in half, reduced the number of servants, and cut food rations. Shen Hao believed that Duxi was deliberately skimming money for himself. Duxi, however, claimed that his mother-in-law was deliberately hiding money. The assets she held were insufficient to support such a large household. When Yinxi told me this, I wasn't surprised at all. It had been a year and a half. The shops I had worked so hard to build up would likely be squandered by Duxi. After expelling me and giving birth to a son, she no longer needed to curry favor with others, especially Shen Hao. I'm afraid she's racking her brains to get Shen Hao's position as crown prince for her son. Shen Hao is almost 16 and not stupid. Naturally, he is opposed to her. I don't have time to watch the drama unfold in that family. After the spring, I will enroll in school and become the first female teacher at the first girls' school. But after winter, the Grand Princess summoned me and told me some things about the Marquis's mansion. The Astronomical Bureau has predicted that there will be heavy snow in the south this year, and the court should prepare in advance. Today in the imperial court, Shen Huizhi volunteered to take full responsibility for this matter. Miaoyi. What do you think? The eldest princess has always held me in high regard. When she asked me that, I immediately understood her meaning. Fortune and misfortune are intertwined. If there is indeed heavy snow in the south, it will be a challenge, but also an opportunity. If Shen Huizhi can seize this opportunity, he will rise even higher. But as a woman, the eldest princess understands me. My efforts, my grievances, my resentment. The eldest princess was hinting that if I refuse, she can deny Shen Huizhi this opportunity. In the previous life, it was indeed so. During the southern snow disaster, Shen Huizhi thought of something that ordinary people couldn't. Before the imperial funds arrived, he used the family's private silver to cover the expenses and promptly sent a large amount of winter supplies, greatly reducing the number of casualties. For this great achievement, he was promoted to Minister of Works the following year. He became the youngest minister in the history of the dynasty. In my previous life, I sold almost all of my dowry to raise the money. It was also after this incident that all of my private property became the property of the Marquis's mansion, and I had nothing left to rely on. In this life, without me and my dowry, I'm not sure what Shen Huizhi would have done. But in any case, the lives of the common people are a matter of great importance. I must not let my personal feelings get in the way. Therefore, I knelt before the princess and said gratefully, "The affairs of the court come first. Your Highness need not consider Miaoyi. It is best to select the most suitable candidate." In the end, the court entrusted this matter to Shen Huizhi. However, the outcome of this life was different from the previous one. Shen Huizhi's decision was the same as in the previous life. Whether it was for his career or for the common people, he took a big gamble. Before the snowstorm really arrived, he used his family's private silver to stockpile a large amount of supplies to keep people warm and sent them to the south. The Marquis's mansion did not have my dowry, but there were still some household items that my mother-in-law had hidden away. My mother-in-law simply disliked me. She had always trusted her son implicitly. Therefore, at first, I believed he would follow the same path as in the previous life, seeking promotion and honors. But in this life, there was also Du Ji. Shen Huizhi, swayed by whispers, appointed a servant from Du Ji's entourage. That servant appeared loyal and trustworthy, but harbored treacherous intentions. On one hand, he pretended to transport supplies southward, while on the other, he embezzled the funds and fled. When the imperial funds arrived, Shen Huizhi remained as confident as in his previous life, believing the supplies had arrived, and did not use the funds for procurement. It wasn't until the biting cold of the southern region drenched him that he realized the truth. He had taken the imperial funds but failed to fulfill his duties. The snowstorm claimed countless lives. The emperor was enraged. On the first day of his return to the capital, his title was stripped and he was dismissed from his post. If it weren't for a few old ministers pleading for him, he would have been thrown into prison immediately. It is said that the Marquis's mansion was particularly cold that winter. They couldn't even afford coal. The old lady saved all her money to try to save Shen Huizhi from prison. The next time I saw Shen Huizhi was at the gate of the princess's mansion. I thought he was there to ask the princess to intercede on his behalf. But instead, he blocked my carriage. "Mr. Hung, would you honor me with a cup of tea?" I had been hiding my face the entire time, and he had never heard me lecture. He did not know that Mr. Hung was me. I did not wish to acknowledge him. He followed closely. Mr. Hung, you are favored by the princess. Could you speak on my behalf to the princess? I would be eternally grateful. I stopped in my tracks. I lifted my veil. I looked at him. Shinhuiji's face turned ashen in an instant. He stared at me in disbelief. You, Mr. Hung. Shinhuiji left in a daze. As he left, his face was pale and lifeless. Muttering, how could this be? 14 years of marriage. He probably didn't even remember what I looked like back then. Unfortunately, his dazed state only lasted a few hours. In the evening, he came to my house again. Meowie. Since you are Mr. Hung, things will be easier now. Unlike the dullness of the morning, his eyes were now dark and bright. Just plead with the princess for mercy and ask her to speak on my behalf before the emperor. Meowie. As long as you help me get through this difficult time, you will still be the marquis's wife in the marquis's mansion. In the future, we will love each other dearly and live happily ever after. Never to be separated again. I looked at him coldly and sneered. Shinhuiji. Am I a slut? Shinhuiji was taken aback. Is your marquis's wife made of gold? Shinhuiji's lips trembled. Where is your dignity? Who gave you the nerve to speak to me like this? Shinhuiji suddenly erupted in anger. Chui Miaoui. Do you think I did this for you? I've lost my title and my position. Do you think I'm the one who's unlucky? It's your son. My son? I laughed again. Does he even share my surname? You. Meowie. Shinhuiji's tone softened. Meowie. We've been married for over a decade. You know this isn't my fault. I didn't fail to procure supplies. I even used my own private assets to cover the costs in advance. I simply misjudged the person. How can you blame me for everything? These words. Mr. Shin. You need not say to me. Go report to the emperor instead. How to decide this matter is up to the emperor. I did not wish to argue further with him. I shook off his hand. As I reached the door, I turned back. Shinhuiji. Failing to recognize a person's true nature is also a sin. I had already paid for that mistake in my previous life. Now it was his turn. Shinhuiji was eventually thrown into prison. With so many people killed and injured in the snowstorm, the people needed an explanation. Before the verdict was handed down, my mother-in-law came to beg me, and Shin Hao came to beg me. Everyone in the marquis's mansion who had been on good terms with me in the past came to beg me. I refused to see any of them. They shouted outside the door. Lady Ho, you've managed this household for over a decade, you can't just abandon it now. I had Yunxi enlarge the divorce decree. Make a copy, and frame it at the door. They said again. Even if you've divorced, he's still the father of the children. I had the official notice of Shinhuiji's arrest copied and posted at the door. They continued. After over a decade of marriage, are you really so heartless? Madam? I had them all driven out and moved to the princess's mansion. A month later, Shinhuiji's verdict was handed down. The emperor, considering his ancestors' merits in protecting the nation and the fact that he had indeed been wronged, stripped him of his title, dismissed him from his post, and sentenced him to 2 years in prison. Finally, no one came looking for me anymore. Overnight, the tree fell and the monkeys scattered, and the marquis's mansion was left empty of people and wealth. Only then did it become known that Duzi had already run away with her child. I sat in a tea house and listened to gossip for half the afternoon. Some said that Duzi had taken what little wealth was left and run away. Some said that the house slave was actually a plot by Duzi to get the marquis's money. Some even said that Duzi had been having an affair with the house slave for a long time and that the marquis had been cuckolded for years. There were so many rumors that Yunxi couldn't figure out what was really going on. But I finally found out the truth. That was a year later. Du Ji and the house servant were arrested by the imperial court, along with the child. It was said that when they were being taken to the prison, they passed by Shin Huiji's cell. At just one glance, Shin Huiji went mad and began to scream wildly. I rushed to the tea house to hear the gossip. I didn't hear any details, but I did run into Du Ji's ex-husband, who had also rushed there to hear the gossip. I didn't know you had this hobby. At that time, I was already famous in the capital, and everyone addressed me as Sir. Let me tell you the truth. It turned out that he didn't divorce Du Ji because she didn't obey her uncle. She broke off her engagement with the Marquis's mansion because she was worried that Shin Huiji wouldn't enter the civil service and would stay at home all day. That would prevent her from having an affair with her lover. I was stationed at the border at the time, returning home only once every 6 months, which suited her perfectly. To be honest, being cuckolded by a servant is truly shameful. You just made up an excuse. Did Shin Huiji never suspect her, even after 10 years together, that she never bore him any children? She dared not. If she gave birth to a child who resembled her lover, it would expose everything. Those two were truly soulmates. When I discovered them, it was because they had attempted to use a potion to prevent me from having children. So that was it. No wonder I had no more children after giving birth to Shin Hao. No wonder even Du Ji's maternal family expelled her from their home. What a childhood sweetheart. What a moon in the sky. Snow in the clouds. After returning home, I couldn't help but laugh. I laughed until tears came out. He deceived me for over a decade, and Du Ji deceived him for over a decade. Karma is inevitable, and retribution is swift. They deserve it. They say Shin Huiji has gone mad. In the dungeon, he neither eats nor drinks, only cries and laughs. The mother-in-law, or rather, Su Shi, also fell ill afterward. The old nurse by her side came to find me many times, saying she had something to tell me. I ignored her, until one snowy day. The old nurse said she wouldn't make it through the night. When I arrived, she lay on the bed, barely breathing, looking just like me on the day I died. Do you remember my 50th birthday? You invited chefs from all over the country, set up 998 tables, and prepared 998 dishes. So many people surrounded me. They said I would live forever and that the future of the Marquis's mansion was limitless. And that year, on New Year's Day, you got so many fireworks from somewhere. She rambled on and on about the glory days of the Marquis's mansion. Finally, her cloudy eyes fixed on me. Chui. It's my fault. I'm sorry for what happened to you. The Marquis's mansion is long gone, I said. The light in Mrs. Su's eyes suddenly disappeared, and tears fell from her eyes. Old Lady Shin. I looked at her emaciated appearance and said, I lost my mother when I was 10 years old. From the day I entered the Marquis's mansion, I have treated you as my own mother. What did I do to displease you so much that you were so critical of me? In my previous life, I was obsessed with wanting to be recognized. I gave everything I could, but she was never satisfied. Only now do I understand. My worth doesn't need others' approval. Su Shi looked at me. Her usually shrewd face was blank. After a moment, she stammered, but I went through the same thing too. Another year passed, and Shin Huiji was released from prison. I hadn't seen him in the capital. I only heard that Du Ji, who had been executed a year ago, had his grave desecrated. Time passed quickly. Over the past 2 years, the number of students at the academy had grown significantly. Besides me, another young woman from a scholarly family had defied her family's opposition to teach at the academy. Spending time with the children, the days were always bright and joyful. In recent days, whenever I entered or left the school, there was always someone following me. It was Shin Hao. Apart from the time he came to see me when Shin Huaiji was imprisoned, I hadn't seen him in a long time. He had grown much taller. Dressed in plain clothes. He was so thin that he was almost unrecognizable from his former self. Perhaps knowing that I wouldn't acknowledge him, he didn't come close. After Mrs. Su passed away, the only nurse who served him also left. The Marquis's mansion had long been emptied, leaving him with little money. I knew he had looked for work everywhere. He couldn't do manual labor. He had no knowledge to sell. He tried to sell his good looks. But after a few days, he offended the customers and ended up losing money. Now he relies on the calligraphy skills I forced him to practice back then, selling paintings and calligraphy to barely make ends meet. Perhaps noticing I was staring at him today, he took a few steps forward. "Mother." His voice was choked with emotion. I turned away. He stopped. I took a step forward. "I'm sorry. That year," he whispered. "She said you hadn't looked after me for months. That you were just teasing me. I didn't know it would turn out that way." In his previous life, he clearly wasn't unaware. In this life, he's a few years younger. But whether he is or isn't, I don't care anymore. I turned around and took out the silver I had prepared earlier. Here are 300 taels of silver. Enough for an ordinary family to live on for 3 years. I looked up at him. "You have 3 choices. At 20, you can take the imperial exams, many pass and become scholars. At 20, you can learn a trade to support your family, there are many such people. At 20, you could end up on the streets, wasting away the rest of your life. Of course, you could also drink and be merry today. Live it up for 3 days. And return to your old ways. All choices are yours. You must only know that life has no turning back." I placed the silver in his hand and turned to leave. The matter was settled. No matter what choice he made, it had nothing to do with me. The sun was shining brightly that day. As soon as I entered the schoolhouse, a child who was drying books ran over to me. "Master." She clung to my leg. "The man who just passed by. They said he was your son, right?" I held her hand. "Yes." "Why didn't you take care of him? He looked so pitiful." "What do you mean? Take care of him? Just hug him? Comfort him? Teach him like you teach us? He's already grown up. He doesn't need that." "Master." "But I read in the books that children follow their fathers when young, their husbands when married, and their sons when their husbands die. A woman should regard her father as heaven, her husband as heaven, and her son as heaven. That is what makes a good woman. The books are wrong." "But why do all the books say that?" "Because." I knelt down and ruffled the little girl's hair. "Those books were written by men, fathers, husbands, and sons. Will there be books written by women in the future?" "Yes. That's who I am. Who we are. And why we're here. Right?"